行くぞ。私が全て破壊する。
破滅の時間ですわ。
Welcome back, friends, to another The City of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Lids87 here from a small YouTube hiatus because I'm moving. Work has been crazy. There's quite a few boxes behind me. I don't think you can see them right there. But let me start off by saying that this is the end of one era and the start of another. The LD and Burst era is nearly here, and with that, an assortment of powerful characters to pick from. But if you are not familiar with the JP side of the game, which characters do you pick? In this video, I hope to answer that question. Now, keep in mind that any recommendations in this video are my own personal opinions. So if you disagree in a very negative demeanor, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to block you. Let's keep this civil. Another thing is that all this information is based off of the JP side of the game, so some things can change over on the global side. Those new to my channel asking about my credentials, I'm a JP player. I have been for over 2 years. I have had first-hand experience with a lot of these units, whether it be their strengths or weaknesses. I've made mistakes on the JP side. I've been broke on the JP side chasing units only to see another stronger one came out due to us not having foresight over there. I've had a lot of success on JP, I've had a lot of failures, but because of this, I can't pass on my knowledge to you, the viewers, the global viewers, in hopes to help avoid my mistakes. Because in the end, that is my ultimate goal. All that being said, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button as I truly appreciate all the love and support. Let's get started. Now, before I make any recommendations, I need to explain a few things about LD and Burst in hopes to answer some potential questions that may arise. I cannot answer all of them in this video, so please feel free to join my Discord in hopes to answer any questions left unanswered. Link will be down below in the description. Banner changes and new weapons. Once this era starts, there will be changes to the weapon banners. Here are the changes that you will see. No more off banners. Only featured weapons will be on banners going forward. That means no more walkaballs. All synergy characters EXs will be featured. Some burst banners are exempt from this rule. And at the time of making this video, one burst and LD weapon per banner, as later on there is a start dash campaign with 3 LDs and 3 burst on it. Along with these initial changes, the rates on the banners will also change. Here are the new rates for EX weapons. Single draw 0.75%, on a multi 7.5%, and the pity amount is 75,000 gems. LD weapons. LD weapons are one of the 2 new weapons we will be receiving in the game, and frankly speaking, this is where a character's new power will come from. LD weapons will give their wielder a new ability they can use in combat, or if you have the LD passive equipped. The ability count will vary per weapon with a minimum of 3 uses if maxed. Please note that if a character is granted a free ability use, LD abilities cannot be used for free. An LD weapon has 3 limit breaks and they require 4 power stones per limit break. If sold, you will receive 1 power stone plus another per limit break. Just like EX weapons, every LD limit break will add new limit break passives to the LD weapon passive. Limit break passives vary, so be sure to check out any of your favorite resources to see what your favorite character's LD limit break passive does for them. In terms of stats, LDs are stronger than non-realized EX weapons, but fully realized and max EXs are stronger than LDs. Here are the rates for LD weapons on a banner. Single draw 0.5%, on a multi 5%, pity amount 75,000 gems. Burst weapons. The second type of weapons we will be receiving are burst weapons. Burst weapons will give their wielder access to a new ability called burst mode. The best way to explain burst mode is like a summons. Once activated, new background music will take place, everything will be teleported to a new plane/dimension, and the initiator will be granted 5 turns to use any abilities with a finish burst on the 6th turn, all within 1 actual game turn. At the start of the burst mode, the initiator's EX recast will be filled and all their abilities will be set to 1, regardless of how many they had outside of burst mode. This does not take up ability uses once burst mode is over. Buff counts will not decrease in burst mode, but you can refresh buffs during this mode. Once the first 5 turns are up, the player can only pick the finish burst on the 6th turn. The finish burst is some kind of ultimate move or attack that is associated with that character. Once done, there's a burst effect that takes place for a few turns. This burst effect varies per character, so I advise you check out what said character's burst effect does, as some effects provide powerful party-wide buffs. Burst weapons do not have any form of limit breaks, so you can max out their level immediately. In terms of raw stats, burst weapons have the highest stats in the game. A few things to note about burst weapons. You can have as many burst weapons on the team as the comp allows, but only one burst mode can be activated per stage run. Burst modes cannot be activated during a summon phase and vice versa. You are allowed to use a friend support's burst mode regardless if you use a burst mode of your own, but only the friend support's finished burst will trigger along with the burst effect. If you sell a burst weapon, you will receive 5 new medals called burst medals. If you happen to collect 50 burst medals, you can trade them in for any burst weapon of your choice. 2 other ways to collect burst medals are via the new challenge stages or premium Mog Pass, which we will discuss on another video. At the time of making this video, and based off of JP information, only the main protagonist and antagonist from each series will be receiving a burst weapon. Upon a character's burst weapon debut, the burst weapon will be repeated on the following 2 to 3 banners, with that character being synergy for said event or story. So if you pick up their LD very early on the debut banner, you could chase their burst on another character's banner, potentially snagging the burst while chasing another character's LD weapon. Burst weapons are the cherry on top. I would not recommend going for burst weapons unless said burst effect has huge party-wide effects, or if they are your ultimate waifu/husbando. LD weapons is where a character's new power and strength will come from. Here are the banner rates for burst weapons. Single draw, 0.1% chance. It is possible to get them with these, but rare. On a multi, 3%, and the pity amount, 125,000 gems. Bye-bye gems. Structure. With all that out of the way, it is time to explain how I will structure my recommendations. With my Twitch viewers in mind, as I did cast a small vote on how many months into the new era they wanted to see me go, I have picked the first 18 units who will be receiving LD weapons within the first 3 months of this new era and divided them into role categories. Those categories are melee attacker, magic attacker, ranged attacker, debuffer, tank, and support. I will pick 1 unit per role that you should strongly consider adding to your roster. I will also list any future units that are excellent replacement for said roles within the following 3 months time frame. Do keep in mind that some of these units fill one role or the other, so I will put them in the role that I believe they fit better into. Afterwards, I will give my top 2 burst recommendations followed by my top 3 overall recommended units within the first 3 months. I'm organizing it this way because as a player, you should be looking to fill specific roles in your roster, especially if you want to take on endgame content. You're going to need a little bit of everything, truthfully, so it is up to you, the player, to decide what you really need in your team comps and your roster. Please note, if you did not see your favorite character in my recommendations, that doesn't mean they are bad. Truthfully, pretty much everyone will become strong when they get their LD weapons. It's just, I gotta narrow down the list, so don't hate me. Melee attackers. Units that love to get in close and personal, this list consists of Squall, Garland, Machina, and Arden. Although Dash and Basch have melee built into the kits, I have added them to the tank role as they have tank-like qualities built into their kits. My top LD pick for the melee role is Arden. Making his debut, Arden is a unit that receives both an LD weapon and burst weapon, and he is too good to pass up. Comparable as the melee version of Noctis, Arden's kit allows him to follow up with damage just like Noctis. If he happens to break a unit in the process, he will be granted an immediate free turn. With his LD, Arden reduces his HP to 0 and he grants himself overkill for several turns. While overkill is active, Arden cannot die even if his HP is at 0. Once overkill is active, he will heal for 1 HP, keeping him safe from death's door. You literally can go an entire stage with Arden being at 0 HP as long as you can keep up his overkill buff by using his LD ability again. A fantastic and safe melee attacker to add to your roster. Here are some near future alternative / replacements to add to your roster. Magic attacker. Time for the spellcasters to have time in the spotlight. Here are the units that fall into this magic role. Shantotto, Ultimisia, Von, Strago, Renoa, and the Emperor. I'm not gonna lie, all of these units are good in one way or another, from Renoa's Wishing Star to Shantotto's Scythe of Death. But alas, I have to narrow it down. My pick for the magic role is Von. If you're looking for a unit that's purely magic damage, Von is your guy. Having more elements on his kit than what's on the planet, Von has been known for massive amounts of damage in a short amount of time. This is even more so with his LD. For 3 turns after using his LD ability, Von gets to use any of his abilities except LD ability completely free. This will let you spam his abilities for a few turns, letting him dish out massive amounts of damage, especially when White Whirl or Luminescence is triggered. If you happen to pick up his burst, that's just the icing on the cake. Here are some near magic replacements to consider. Ranged attacker. Not gonna lie, this role has 2 units, but I added 9 to the tank support role. So your choice for this role is Noctis. The one and only Prince Noctis becomes a king with his LD and god tier with his burst. Able to manipulate his turns based on who he attacks with point blank warp, Noctis' LD gives this effect to his allies. After using his LD, Noctis grants quick warp to the party for 2 turns. Whenever someone attacks while buffed with quick warp, they get their turn moved right before the attacked enemy's turn. Oh, by the way, this does not increase the turn count. This allows for some insane gameplay, letting you beat harder content in fewer turns. Looks like your party is now part of the Kingsglaive. Haha, funny lids. Here are some near future ranged alternatives, not replacements, to consider for your roster. Debuffer. These units love inflicting some form of status ailments, giving your team the edge it needs in combat. The units in this role are Emmett Lion, Edward, and Kefka. Okay, seriously, all these units are great. From Spoony Bard putting enemies to sleep to Emmett Lion literally deleting enemy turns and going on to be the best friend support unit in the game. But the top spot will go to Kefka. Our adored psychopathic clown is making yet another comeback, but this time he is given an LD and burst weapon. Able to inflict blind, HP silence, attack down, speed down, defense down, and steering clown, Kefka easily takes the top spot for debuffer. With his LD ability Hyperdrive, Kefka can extend debuffs he inflicted by 1 turn and inframe those debuffs. This is a great way to keep the enemy from buffing themselves, especially if you have all 6 debuff slots filled. What better way to wreak havoc upon the enemies? Near future alternatives / replacements for debuffers. Tank and supports, the lifeline of your rosters. The units in this role have some kind of tank-like qualities built into their kit. They focus on keeping your party members alive against the toughest of foes, whether it's by healing the party or literally taking the damage for them. These units are Dash, 9, Basch, and Kamari. There's only one top pick tank during this time frame because literally Warrior of Light will leave the other candidates in the dust, and that choice is Basch. Basch's specialty focuses on taking damage for your party. He converts all AoE HP damage to himself while granting himself HP damage reduction. To help keep him alive, Basch is able to sustain his own HP and is able to take the pressure off the rest of your party by target locking the enemies. With his LD, he is able to reapply his HP damage reduction buff, target lock the enemies, buffs himself, and if his HP drops below 50%, he will heal back up to 50% of his HP. This guy sure can take a lot of hits and shrug them off with ease. Here are some near future replacements to consider for the tank role on your roster. Burst recommendations. Now that LDs have been covered, time to talk about burst weapon recommendations. Keep in mind, friends, not everyone needs their burst weapons. Treat burst weapons as the cherry on top, as they are very expensive to pity, being at 125,000, unless RNG is truly on your side. But of course, there are some units that are worth the chase. Units to receive burst weapons during this time frame are Squall, Shantotto, Vaughn, Noctis, Arden, and Kefka. The 2 units that I picked for this category are absolutely worth the pity. They are both extremely strong considerations with just their base kit and LD, with their burst weapon making them stronger even further. The number 2 spot goes to Arden. Making a second appearance on my list, Arden is one of the top 2 burst weapons I recommend during this time frame. One unique thing about burst mode is that it sets all your ability uses to 1, even if you use them all up before activating this mode. Being able to refresh his immortality buff with his LD while dishing out massive amounts of follow-up damage makes for a very strong burst mode. Once Arden's burst mode is done, there will be a party-wide burst effect that will raise everyone's max brave and provide a nice brave regen effect. Seriously consider this guy as your go-to melee burst unit to add onto your roster. For the top spot, if you're a Final Fantasy 15 fan, say goodbye to your gems, as Noctis is the unit to chase during this time frame. Just as I mentioned earlier, Noctis becomes god tier upon his burst debut. Already being able to manipulate party members' turns for free with his LD ability, doing so during the burst mode will set you up for some powerful turns after his finished burst. With his burst effect, Noctis will follow up a party member's turn with damage of his own. If you happen to have a unit that can act multiple times in a row, this will not decrease Noctis's burst effect counter, as it only decreases when it's Noctis's turn. This will allow you to get away with a lot of follow-up damage from Noctis. 3 turns for the party, massive amounts of damage, then very strong turns after his finished burst makes Noctis a top consideration worthy of your gens. Now here are some near future alternatives / replacements if you don't decide to chase these Final Fantasy 15 monsters. Lightning, Cloud, and Furion. Out of these 3 units, I highly recommend chasing Lightning's LD and Burst, but we will talk about that in another video. So to sum it all up, here are the top 3 units I recommend for the first 3 months of the LD and Burst era. Basch. Tanks can play a vital role in any team composition, and Basch fills it beautifully. Taking all the damage for your party while being able to self-sustain makes Basch the best tank during this time frame and some. Arden. Arden is an undying melee attacker that can dish out massive amounts of damage while also receiving free turns. And Noctis. Noctis's utility will let you absolutely obliterate content headed our way. Seriously, someone was able to beat the first Lufenia, which is the next difficulty above Chaos, in 3 turns with Noctis on the team. Absolutely busted. Conclusion. Again friends, all these recommendations are my own opinion. It's perfectly fine to disagree, as not everyone will like these units. So if you're under the mindset that you're going to skip all these units for someone else, I highly recommend you save for Lightning. More power to you, as you already know what you want. Just as long as you fill those roles with updated units, you're going to be just fine. It's harder to go wrong during this era, but be on the lookout for units that go above and beyond that I will talk about in any future videos. That is it for this video, friends. I want to thank you guys for watching my recommended units for the start of the LD and Burst era. Hopefully I was able to help a huge number of you decide on who to chase. Me personally, for LDs, I would love to pick up Squalls and Bonds. Burst wise, I'm going to go ham for Noctis and Arden, followed by Lightning, Sephiroth, and Cloud in the near future. Be sure to let me know down below in the comments your picks for the start of the LD and Burst era. Try to stay within the first 3 months, and who you are most excited for after the first 3 months. So until next time, friends, good luck and have a good one. Gosh damn, it's freaking warm here doing this without the AC on.